que sí el presidente le dijo y fue muy tajante, quiero que me mande las cabecillas de pandilleros.
What he did say, and I think he was very forceful, is, I want you to send me the gang leaders who are in the United States.
On Tuesday, Salvadoran ambassador to Washington, Milena Mayorga, made a major admission in a TV interview. She said that during U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit to El Salvador early this week, Nayib Bukele made a major ask in exchange for sweeping deportation cooperation. An ask that strikes at the heart of his negotiations with the Mara Salvatrucha from 2019 to 2022 for a reduction in homicides. I'm Roman Gracia, the editor of El Faro English. It's Friday, February 7th, and this is Central America in Minutes.
In Nicaragua, the house arrest of Daniel Ortega's brother
relates more to El Salvador and Honduras than to Guatemala. In the case of Guatemala,
they say globalism comes to die at CPAC, but in El Salvador, it's already dead.
Central America in Minutes on El Faro English.
We'll get back to MS-13 at the end of today's show. But first, to Nicaragua, where fierce internal regime competition and palace purges claim new casualties, even among loyalists who have been instrumental to Ortega and Murillo's consolidation of power and crushing of even the slightest dissent. Toward the end of January, Rosario Murillo ordered the removal of Presidential Security Advisor Horacio Rocha Lopez, a retired police commissioner and Ortega loyalist who led the raids of offices of judicial officials in a purge orchestrated by Murillo in late 2023. Rocha became known as the, quote, angel of death for his role in removing disgraced regime officials from their offices. These officials included former Supreme Court President Albaluz Ramos in October 2023, after which she was placed under home surveillance, leaving the Supreme Court two-thirds vacant. Rocha also oversaw the dislodging of Luis Alberto Pérez Olivas, the former head of the notorious Directorate of Judicial Assistance, which oversees El Chipote prison. In 2018, Human Rights Watch and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights named Pérez Olivas as the overseer of facilities torturing political prisoners. Digital outlet Confidencial reported that Rocha, like those he once dislodged, is now under home surveillance with restricted movement. Sources close to the police told the outlet that Murillo was vehemently upset that Daniel Ortega's brother Humberto had been able to leak an audio message to Confidencial weeks prior to his death under house arrest last September, on the watch of Rocha's team. In the audio, Humberto Ortega denounced his arbitrary detention and declared himself a political prisoner. Just days before Rosario Murillo removed Rocha, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights issued precautionary measures for Humberto Ortega's partner, Angelica Chavarria, who remains forcibly disappeared since May 2024 at the time of his house arrest. Murillo has now also removed Sandinista faithful Supreme Court magistrate Marvin Aguilar, who had assumed as interim president in 2023 after the removal of President Albaluz Ramos. These new purges come as Murillo consolidates her political power in Nicaragua. Sweeping changes to the constitution named her an unelected co-president who will hold on to power in the case that Daniel Ortega dies. Sandinismo also decreed that Ortega and Murillo's current term will be extended another year, delaying the next electoral process until 2027. With yet another Supreme Court vacancy, Murillo is expected to nominate or reduce 9 magistrates this year, down from 16, with 5 women and 4 men. Murillo's time has arrived, and she's seeking to remake what is left of the Nicaraguan judiciary in her solitary image. Next to El Salvador, where the executive branch sent a reform to the penal code to the legislature that would make soldiers, quote, agents of authority when accompanying or carrying out functions of public security, despite the Constitution's reservation of that designation for the National Civil Police. The 1983 Constitution provides the Salvadoran armed forces are to defend the sovereignty of the state and that the president can turn to them in exceptional cases for internal security. El Salvador's ill-named state of exception will hit the 3-year mark at the end of March, despite the fact that it could legally only have been extended for up to 2 months total. During this time, soldiers have patrolled alongside police. As Gabriel Labrador reported in El Faro English in December 2022, this led to the arbitrary arrest and torture of 8 Salvadoran teens by soldiers in Bajo Lempa, including beatings, insults, forced exercise, and death threats. An investigation by the Human Rights Ombudsman found that the 8 arrests violated the boys' civil right to freedom. They were released within hours, the Ombudsman asserted, because the Bukele-controlled Attorney General's office proved receptive to the Ombudsman's complaint. The encroachment of the Salvadoran army on public security tasks designated to the National Civil Police is a years-old practice in El Salvador. Bukele proposed that soldiers become involved in his first days in office. He took from the playbooks of the left-wing FMLN governments of Mauricio Funes and Salvador Sánchez Serén, who governed in consecutive terms before Bukele from 2009 to 2019. Sánchez Serén, a former guerrilla commander, signed an executive order in 2018 to involve the armed forces in civilian security. While Bukele just passed changes to the Salvadoran constitution to allow modifications at will, he will now seek to modify the penal code and other lower laws. But it would appear that the militarization of civilian security is not such a new idea after all. Last, we stay in El Salvador. On Monday, Nayib Bukele received U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio at his home on Lake Coatepeque. As Rubio left, he praised Bukele for what he described as a very generous and unprecedented offer to hold incarcerated Salvadoran, Venezuelan, international, and U.S. gang members and others convicted of crimes in the Salvadoran prison system. What Rubio and Bukele did not say is what Bukele on the issue of gangs asked for concretely in return. But Ambassador Mayorga spilled the beans. Bukele would like the United States to return to El Salvador the leaders of MS-13 in U.S. custody. As El Faro English reported in June 2024, 7 of 27 Mara Salvatrucha leaders are being held in the United States as they await trial on 2 federal terrorism indictments. The other 20 purportedly remain in Salvadoran custody. The Justice Department mentions Bukele administration officials by name as part of the Salvadoran government's secret and illegal negotiation for a reduction of homicides and electoral support in El Salvador from 2019 to 2022. U.S. prosecutors also assert that, as part of those accords, the Salvadoran government protected gang leaders wanted for crimes in the United States by skirting their extradition. Among those in U.S. custody is Elmer Canales Rivera, also known by his alias Crook of Hollywood. El Faro revealed audio recordings in May 2022 of a top Bukele prison official admitting to personally taking Canales out of prison and helping him escape to Guatemala. He then made his way to Mexico, where local authorities arrested him and foisted him over to U.S. instead of Salvadoran custody in November 2023. In a last-ditch effort to recover Canales, or Crook, audio published by El Faro English in January 2024 revealed that the Salvadoran police chief of the elite division against organized crime conspired with a fugitive gang member to negotiate with the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel to kidnap the MS-13 leader and send him back to El Salvador. But the fugitive conned the Bukele administration and is now under U.S. protective custody himself. It's safe to say that Crook's story and that of Bukele's collapsed negotiations with the Salvadoran gangs is truly the stuff of Hollywood. For more, read our front page story, offering the U.S. his torture prisons. Bukele wants MS-13 leaders back. Thank you for streaming Central American Minutes. I wrote today's episode with production and original soundtrack by Omnium. El Faro English translates Central America. You can support our work every month by going to support.elfaro.net and joining our crowdfunding community. Our mantra is simple: journalism must go on. Hasta pronto.